On this episode of Bootstrappers, we're going to speak with Tracy Streich of Renter's Place in Oklahoma. He's going to explain how he has done property syndication in the past and help us figure out how we can make more money by using a similar program. That's next on Bootstrappers.
Welcome to Bootstrappers, a unique program designed to help make your business better. From property management to remote workers, Bootstrappers is here to help your business succeed. Bootstrappers is a production of Anaquim LLC, so let's lace up those business boots and join Bootstrappers with Jeremy and Gwen Aspen.
Welcome to Bootstrappers, where we talk about topics that matter to real estate entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Jeremy Aspen, along with my spouse and sweet co-host, Gwen Aspen. We have an exciting show for you today where we're going to talk about property syndication with our guest, Tracy Streich. Did I say that right?
You did, yeah.
Okay,
it all sounds good so far.
The president of Renter's Place, and they're in Oklahoma City, as well as Realis Property Management, Tulsa, to be precise. I cannot wait to get to that.
Yeah. So Bootstrappers is sponsored by Anaquim. Anaquim is a company that helps property management and real estate companies be more successful. Whether you need a virtual assistant or a 24-hour call center for maintenance, leasing, or call overflow, or you just need some back office support, Anaquim has you covered.
And someday we're going to have to talk about that back office support thing because there's some new stuff there. Also, if you're a fan of the show, if you'd share with your friends and like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us a nice message and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we will send you a little gift afterwards, which Tracy will tell us what that is a little bit later on in the show. We can't forget to do that.
No,
what we're going to do is we're going to send a book to the first review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, so send those reviews.
Yeah, we'll tell you how in a second. So anyway, that'll be the giveaway for this week. So let's get right to it. I'm excited to talk about this topic of property syndication because I don't know anything about it. I don't know much about it.
We're going to learn about it.
I kind of conceptually can put it together, but so we'll get into the whole bunch of the specifics. Tracy has quite a bit of experience in that. Just a little bit of a twist to what property management is. So let's introduce Tracy. Tracy,
hi,
how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, I've known Tracy for years. We met at probably a NARPM conference. No, probably a rent manager conference.
I think it was NARPM first, and then rent manager conferences after that.
And then when you don't come to the conferences, Tracy takes care of.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Which I really appreciate. I never really have got to appreciate.
I always send pictures. Here I am with your wife. Thanks.
So I want to know a little bit more about Renter's Place and Realis Property Management. Can you tell us a little bit about what you got going on over there?
Sure. So we are a mainly single-family property management company. We do some small multifamilies, things like that, in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. The majority of our portfolios in Tulsa, we opened up in Oklahoma City at the beginning of this year, which, I mean, what better time to open up in a new market?
Nice one.
Right?
Well, you get to be in your car longer to get to your properties.
Well, I isolate in my car, so that's what I tell myself. That's why it's good to drive to Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's not that far. I mean, it's an hour and 20 minutes. One of my staff persons here used to live in Houston and drive an hour and a half one way just to get to work. So I feel like it's
so it doesn't sound
probably
so
not that bad. It sounds like a long ways if you're in Nebraska and Oklahoma.
Well, Tulsa's a lot like Omaha. I've been there, and it's pretty flat. And it has strip malls on the outskirts, lots of strip malls, but you can get like it's like Lincoln.
It's good quality of life.
Yeah,
right.
Good quality of life.
So Renters, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
With Renter's Place, you've done this syndication, this property or real estate syndication 4 times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I don't know.
How do you do it one time? What's that? Let's start there.
It's kind of like, I'll tell you, it's kind of like property management. I would just kind of fall backwards into it, and the next thing you know, you're doing it.
And you're rich.
Yeah, that's right.
Boom,
I mean, I've got to get off here in about 10 minutes to get to my daily massage, but I guess I can put them off a little bit. It's kind of like property management in that we kind of came up with this idea, and I didn't even know it was called syndication. I was like, you know what we should do? We should put together a group of investors and like pool their money and then go buy some property. And Derek was like, yeah, maybe that's a pretty good idea. Maybe we should do that. And I was telling somebody about it, and he goes, you mean you're going to do a syndication? And I was like, let me look that up real quick. Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do a syndication.
It's not as unique a thought as I guess I thought it was.
So, and Gwen, you had called it a REIT, and I've heard people call like what we've done like a micro REIT. So kind of the difference in a REIT and a syndication would be, I think of a REIT as like a Wall Street investment where they've got, $70 billion invested in real estate all over the United States. It's very heavily regulated by the SEC as far as disclosures and investments and things like that.
Whereas you can't really rip off your clients in a REIT, right?
Right. Yeah. And a syndication, if you do it right, doesn't require as much of that, SEC disclosure. I mean, people have been pulling them. I mean, I could call you guys up and say, hey, you guys want to throw in $100,000 a piece and buy, a couple houses in Tulsa? And I mean, that's
sold.
Like what a syndication is.
Sold.
I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't.
I'm done. I mean, check's in the mail.
So,
okay.
So what was the year that you did the very first one?
Oh, that was 65, 66. No, I don't know, like 5 years ago.
Okay, so you've done 4?
Yeah. We've done 4.
And
so
it started 5 years ago. So it seems like this
right.
Tell us what we need to know if we were to get one started, what would the steps be?
I guess the starter is it one house that you're syndicating, soliciting investments for, or is it a package of houses, or is it a multiplex in your case? I mean, you can do it with any of them, of course.
Right. So the first 2 we did were with 2 duplex communities. So the first one had 16 duplexes, so 32 doors, and then the next one had 18 duplexes. And we pulled together the money, did some rehabs on those, and up the rents. And we don't have, just so you know, we don't have any right now. We've already taken them from buy, rehab, max out the rent, and resell them. So we sold both of those, and then the next 2 we did were single family homes. So we identified a geographical area and said, okay, we are going to buy single family homes and these are the geographic boundaries. So a couple highways, a couple of main arterial streets, and said everything's going to be within those parameters. So one of those had, I want to say it had 28 homes, and the other one had about 37 homes in it.
Okay. So they're big deals.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're not, there's not really a need to, I guess maybe if you're in California and it costs you, $850,000 to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house out there, maybe it's, you could do one with 3 or 4 houses, but, we are typically in that $100,000 home range on those.
Okay.
So, somewhere between 3 and 4 million when all is said and done on each of those.
So for acquisition, you're at 100,000, or when you're selling it? Must be on the acquisition side. Acquisition
with repairs. So maybe we might buy something for 80, but we're putting 20 in it. Okay. So the total acquisition cost on that house is about 100,000. Obviously, we want it to be more than that when we're liquidating.
So how many investors did you have on any of those deals?
So on each of those, we probably had as little as 6 and as many as 11.
Okay. And so can you tell us, now that you've done this 4 times, what is the ideal investor for one of these if people are looking and starting one?
Okay. So what's the ideal investor? Can I come back to that in a minute?
Yeah.
Because I'd rather talk about like what exactly it is, how we set it up, and then talk about the ideal investor.
All right.
Because when I get down to one of the things I learned, one of those things is it's not what I thought.
Okay.
Got it.
So I think that can kind of be a summary point at the end.
Let's do that.
So, when I look at what it is, and it's kind of like, if it's easier for people to look at, and based on what you just said, Jeremy, they can kind of see it. It's like investing in a stock versus in a mutual fund. So if I'm just buying Apple, all my money hinges on what Apple does. But if I buy, Vanguard Trust, mid-market cap, something or other, they may have 50 different companies in that. So it's a little bit more even on your investment. Instead of doing a lot of up and downs, you're looking for nice and steady with a little bit of uptick. So as an investor, why would you want to invest in one of these? So if I'm going to investor A and saying, Jeremy, we want you to invest in this, why would you want to do it? I look at it, so I look at this stuff kind of from a property management perspective and a rental home owner perspective. So if I own one house and it's vacant for a month, and that's my only house, and you probably have, investors like this in your property management company, they start freaking out, right? They're like, oh crap, what am I going to do? They email you and call you twice a day. Is it leased? Is it leased? Is it leased? What are we going to do? What do we need to make a concession? And you're like, whoa. Hey, deep breath. Yeah, it's a process. We'll get you there.
Deep breath. Thanks for letting. We didn't know that your house was available. Ooh, embarrassing.
Right. We just totally missed that. Yeah. Or the air conditioner goes out. And you're like, hey, you got a tenant in here. It's the end of July and the air conditioner's out, and we need $5,500 to replace the air conditioner. And they're like, well, I didn't even think about saving $5,500 for an air conditioner. What am I going to do? How about you don't invest in property?
Yeah, that's right. that would be the better
But if you've
choice.
got an investor that's got 15 properties and he's got one vacant, he probably doesn't even notice that blip, right? Or he says, hey, one of your air conditioners went out. Well, I got rent from 14 other homes to cover the air conditioner, so it's not a big deal. So I look at that from a investor in a REIT. That was one of our big pitches to our investors, is why have all your eggs in one basket? I think HGTV and Bigger Pockets and podcasts like this have made it a whole lot more sexy to be in real estate. So it's not a tough sell. Like, hey, you want to invest in real estate? Because they'd love to be able to tell their friends they've invested in this.
You know what? I think that's
REIT.
so true. There's a low barrier of entry in real estate, and a lot of that is because the homes qualify for some version of a subsidized conventional loans, right? I mean, they make it so that you can buy fourplexes or less relatively easily. You just have to basically, it used to be you just had to say that you made so much money and boom, okay, now you qualify. And then you can get one. And I've got friends that would have, like 60 units. And what they prided themselves on and where their goals were was on unit count. They wanted to have so many units by the time they were so old. And that's not the goal. Like, here's some advice for anybody that's looking at investing in property. Do it for the money.
Right.
Like put together an idea, concept that's going to make money. Don't put yourself in this weird situation where you've got more units than you probably should be able to afford, and you're struggling on the cash flow. You probably got them for close to no money down, or you finagled some way of pulling all your cash out. So every time there's a $5,000 outlay, you don't have it. That's just a tidbit. Why don't you just take that advice and run with it? That should keep some people out of the industry, so we can work with
everybody loves no money down, right? That's
yeah.
we do it with other people's money. It's just, it doesn't always work out that way, for sure.
Yeah.
So as we're looking at putting these together, as Derek and I are always bouncing crazy ideas off the wall and seeing what sticks, and we're like, okay, why would we even want to start a syndication from a property management perspective? So I mean, that's our bread and butter is property management. Now, do we own homes? Yes, we own some of our own homes. We own some of our other investments, and we've done these syndications. But it's like, okay, what feeds our property management machine? And the thought was, well, let's say we're going out and buying 35 single-family homes. Well, one, we get to add 35 single-family homes to our portfolio to manage. We know a little bit about the homes before we're getting into it. It's not just the random owner calling up and saying, hey, I've got 7 homes. And you say, all right. And next thing you know, you find out that, the wood's falling off and there's no sheetrock inside and they haven't had heat in 3 years, and you're like, oh, well, wish we wouldn't have taken that. But the other thing is we get to be part of the deal. So as we set up the syndication and we set it up, and I'll talk about this in a second, we did it on a GP-LP agreement. So general partner, limited partner. So we were the general partners, and we got a percentage of the ownership of the fund just because we were the general partners. We're managing the fund. We're setting it up. We're doing all that. So we get a little piece of that pie. And our other thought was there's going to be less churn from a property management perspective, because as the general partner on those 35 homes, we are not going to fire us as the property manager. And we don't have these individual owners. Let's say we got 10 people in on it and they all put in $100,000. So they put in $1 million. Those guys aren't looking at a monthly statement and saying, well, why did we spend $85 on a garbage disposal? Or they're not looking at that. They're just looking at their return.
Right.
So they're not as interested on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis on the house. Now we are, but
you don't have that pressure.
A lot of our time is, eaten up with those owner questions. And we're like, okay, if we can get, 35, 75 houses where we are the quote owner and manager, it just makes it easy from our perspective, from a property management side, to take care of those homes.
So we used to have this building sold for a lot of money, but he would, his name was Chris. Chris would call us. We would have one meeting a year, and we would talk about how the property went the past year, and we would put together a plan for the next year. And having that kind of a client, I mean, obviously he was in a position where he wasn't feeling like an $85 disposal is going to be a problem, but it also made it so that we decided that we wanted more clients like that, because we don't have to spend 20 or 30% of our time having a discussion about something the investor can do nothing about. Right. And now, of course, there are opportunities, and I'm sure it happens in industry, where people get ripped off. If you don't trust your property manager and you think they're stealing from you, check into it, drill down. But if you've teamed up with the right property management company, then you really should just be able to leave them alone and look at your investment like you look at your TD Ameritrade statement.
Right. There's got to be a certain level of trust. I mean, one of my best friends is a financial advisor, and I'm like, he's got a lot of money of mine and other people's that he manages, and I don't call him every 3 days and say, hey, I was online looking at my account, and I was wondering why you traded out that one at that particular hour, because if you would have held it for one more day, we could have made another $75.
You want to split the difference?
Right. That's perfect. Will you be willing to split that with me? I love it.
So Tracy, tell us more about starting up the syndication.
Okay. And one last thing on why we liked it. And if you think about it as a property manager, you're also the broker on this deal.
Oh, right.
So you get to make money in all three ways that you can make it there. So we made money from a brokerage side when we acquisition of the property. Then we making money in the middle of managing the property. And then we make money on the end again with the sale of the property. So that's kind of a nice thing for us as a brokerage. And, we don't have to charge a typical full fee, but I mean, even if you're making 1.5-2% on that, it's nice.
Do you sell the package, or do you sell the property individually?
Well, yes. We did both.
Okay.
We did both. Because I've always told people the reason I like single family when it comes to investment is I've got a lot of different exit strategies. Mm-hmm. I can sell it as a package, or I can sell it to the newly married couple, Jeremy and Gwen, who are all excited to own their first house and they're going to pay too much and all that good stuff, and sell it for full retail. Mm-hmm. So, if you own the, T-Mobile building down on the corner, I mean, it's, what do they want to know? What's the cap rate? That's it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, there's no emotion that goes into buying that building. Mm-hmm. So
even a multiplex, that's more
right.
You're on a multiplex, you're buying the cap rate. How much is it worth to you? And
you can sell single family on a cap rate, but You can also sell it full retail.
Yeah, full retail. I mean, you've rehabbed all of these, so there's a decent chance that going straight to the consumer is going to come with have a little bit more of a premium.
Correct.
All right,
which
so what else
everybody
you got?
that's
I
in
love
it
this
like.
stuff.
Yeah, I love this.
Okay, so how do you set it up? I talked about that just briefly. There's really 3 ways you can set it up. You can have a GP/LP, which is the general partner, and the limited partner, and that's the way we set ours up. And the reason we did that is so the general partner is typically on the hook from a lending perspective, and not the limited partner. So that's part of the enticement for the limited partners. So I can say,
can you look at that as kind of A and B stock? Is that
yes,
you still have the A and B?
Yes.
Okay.
So you could do it as an LLC with limited membership as well for A and B, or you could do a straight LLC and put everybody on the loan. To me, that's a really complicated way to do it.
You're right.
Because, I mean, I don't know how you're going to get 10 people to show up and sign docs and do stuff like that. So part of the enticement for the investor was, hey, you're putting in your X amount, say it's $100,000, and that's all you've got in it. You don't have to worry about the loan, the lending, the stuff like that. The general partners are worrying about that. And that's part of what you're taking on as a general partner for your percentage, which is typically about 20% of the deal.
Oh, really? So
partner.
of the equity position, you take
Correct.
20%? Okay. Well, that's a great number.
It is.
But you are the general, and so are on the hook for the loan, or should anything happen, insurance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So, this is where people start to get into a bunch of the SEC questions on what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Are you selling shares? Like, I'm guessing they actually own shares of the company.
They own shares. So that's what we set up the general partnership, and then if Jeremy and Gwen were buying in, they would buy shares in that partnership. You can't just, it's one of those things where, so you have to say, you've got to sign off that says you're a qualified investor, which, there's minimums on what your income is and your total asset value of all your stuff personally. But it's not, we don't have to review that based on the way we set it up. I don't have to say, Jeremy, give me all your financials and prove to me that you're a qualified investor. I say, here's this form, sign it. You say you're a qualified investor, and that's what's required. And you can only raise money from people that you know. So I think that's very loose.
Yeah.
Like,
you can go meet them.
Right. So now do I know them? But I think the thing is, what you can't do is you can't put a big ad in the newspaper or online or throw it up on a billboard and just get random people showing up for your offering.
So is that a state or IRS?
That's an IRS. That's a federal regulation.
Really? Okay.
And a lot of it's called Regulation D. So if you do Reg D syndication on a Google search, you're going to get more information than you know what to do with. But, to make sure we did it right, we hired an attorney. And I will say that this is where you get a little barrier to entry on some of this stuff. It's not cheap to get it started. Just the paperwork portion to get it right was a little over $20,000.
Oh, wow.
Well, so what you could do to be really nice is just give us everything that you've got, copy, paste, put it in another document, and we'll just give it to everybody for free.
I'll post it tonight.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
There's just one. You got to log into the deal, and I think the login password's I don't remember what we said, 15,000, something like that.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you buy shares in the partnership, and then in those documents you lay out your plan. But you obviously have to come up with your plan ahead of time. So, some of my notes on what's in your plan. Are you going to buy new construction? Are you buying apartments, office, retail, single family homes, duplexes? So you got to kind of go into it. And we had, it was called with our bank, it wasn't really a line of credit. But we got pre-approved with, basically said, hey, here's what we're doing. We're buying homes within, these boundaries, which they liked. Okay, yeah, we like that. We want to be in those parts of town. And we're going to have X amount of cash because we knew what was coming in from the investors. And then based on that, we want to borrow X amount of money. So let's say we wanted to borrow, say we raised $1 million and we wanted to borrow $3 million. So it was a $4 million deal. And a guidance line, I knew it would come to me. So we would go out and buy the properties with cash and then just refinance them with that guidance line and, pull as much cash back out as we could every time until you're out of cash, you're not buying anymore.
So it kind of operates like a construction loan. It sounds like. Is it stepped in the same way, or is it kind of more
very similar? I mean, they didn't really put any guidelines on us, like, well, you can't spend more than X on a house. They're just looking at it from and it's a bank we've had a very long-term relationship with, so that helps. I mean, they understand what we do and how we've done it in the past, and they know we're not going to go buy a $100,000 house and try and pass it off as a $190,000 house
and lever up and use the cash for something else.
So some other things you need to consider is, because they all ask your investors, how long is this going to be? How long are you going to have my cash? So, is it a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year? A lot of the commercial retail ones are 10 years. So if they're building a new, strip commercial center, those are typically 10-year deals. What happens if one of the limited partners wants out?
A divorce.
And that's happened more than once.
Sure.
All of a sudden they're like, hey, I got this other deal. What will it take to get my money back? Well, have you heard of the term a haircut? You're gonna, right? So listen, maybe you put $50,000 in and we can get you $50,000 back. But I mean, based on market value, your $50,000, your 100 shares, that's worth $75,000 now. So it's not that hard to find somebody to buy it out. And it's typically, in our case, it was always one of the other investors. And we even wrote that in our documents. The other investors had the first right of refusal. So Jeremy wants to sell his 50. I go to Gwen and say, hey, we got 50 more shares. Do you want them? She's like, shoot, yeah, Jeremy's an idiot. I'm like, well, we know that.
Always says that.
So, all that's spelled out.
So
we also,
it has to go, that share, that $50,000 goes back through the company and then to the investor. So you are buying it for 50. They're not negotiating amongst each other like, okay, this is
no.
Right.
No, okay. If you want to sell it, you come to us. And actually, I believe the way we wrote it is the general partner has the first right, limited partners have the second right, then outside of the partnership, which is pretty nice as a general partner. I mean, we bought some stuff back that they were like, well, I need to sell. Can you find somebody to buy? And we're like, we'll get you a check tomorrow. I mean, we'll
got this.
Yeah, because, you're 3 years into a deal that's appreciated. Why wouldn't you buy it back at a discount?
Yeah.
Because it's already, I'm buying it back then knowing that it's already performing or overperforming or however it did. So,
right.
Do you ever hold? Or have you ever heard of any deals where you've got the investment, you acquire, and then you manage and just maintain it, so then the cash flow comes from the operation itself of the rental?
Yes. I think most investors, though, want some sort of payback on that initial. I guess the question would be, how fast can they get their initial contribution back on something like that? And a lot of people go out and do a refi and pay that stuff back faster. I don't like doing that, and that's some of the other stuff in the what we've learned. But most people like to know an exit date. So and there may be something in there like, hey, at year 5, we're going to start shopping it, but we're going to try and be all out by 7, unless there's some other trigger that happens that says, okay, it's accelerated to this amount. And, 2 years in, if you can double your money, why wouldn't you go ahead and sell it?
Right. So
on the deals that you've done, did you do 3, 5? How many years were your specific ones?
Our plan was 5. So on the duplex communities, we had some out-of-state buyers that were looking for stuff like that. And they bought them, and we're happy to sell them at that price. The single family, we actually sold out of one. In retrospect, had I known what the market was going to do the last 6 months, maybe 6 months too early. But I don't know if you Google the Gathering Place, Tulsa, it's this big park that they built down on the river.
I have heard of that.
Huge.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like $750 million park. And it was like last year, it was Time's #1 attraction in the United States. But anyway, so as they announced that, and
wait,
you
is
don't
Tulsa
build
technically the United States?
Yes.
But didn't you guys go through a lawsuit?
Did we? Are we trying to remove ourselves from the?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it may be Indian land if that's what you're referring to, but it's still
still the good old United States.
We still have to pay taxes.
Okay, all right.
So you don't build something like that in like 3 months. I mean, it was a shutdown of everything down in that area for like 3.5 years, and we thought, you know what, we should buy. So there's a little kind of up and coming. I mean, I don't want to say up and coming. It's one of those. You know how every town has the like little young married hipster type of community.
Yes.
It's called Brookside here, and it's always been a great place to buy homes. But we thought, you know what, we should buy Brookside and do a Brookside fund because we really feel like the property values are going to really spike. And the problem is our buying area was like 1.5 miles by 1.5 miles. And it took about 6 weeks to have bought every and this acquisition is kind of a hard thing to do on these when you're doing single family one at a time. Like in 6 weeks, we had everything under contract that was available. And it's like, oh, now what? So it took a little longer to acquire the homes. We had to do some knocking, do some calling. But we ended up selling those to a builder who didn't even care about the homes on the lot. He just wanted the lots.
Oh, wow.
Because it's in that area where they're paying $150,000 to tear down a house to build an $800,000 house. Well, we've got these $100,000 houses, and he's willing to give us $150,000 a house because he just wants the lots. We're like, yeah, okay, let's sell it.
No,
So-
you didn't tell him that you were really disappointed that you weren't going to have to do all the construction work, and then
Right.
So
Well, the great thing is he's just tearing them down, and it worked out well for us from a management side. We're still managing them until he tears them down. So he'll tear one down, build it, sell it, and then say, okay, this house on 45th, I need them out. We're going to build there. And then tear it down. So we just get to keep leasing them for him until he tears them down. So, I mean, they're tearing them down, though.
What is the return that you kind of commit to, or that you, generally speaking, can tell an investor?
Well,
not the general, but the liable.
Right. So we did a 4% preferred return on ours, which meant the investors, the limited partners, got a 4% return. But pretty much, it's not guaranteed, but it's almost guaranteed. Like if they don't get their 4% that quarter, it'll be made up the next quarter, so on. So it's owed to them. So even if we sell, you got to catch up your preferred returns before you pay out any distributions at the end. So we felt like we needed to do that because why would anybody just give us money to buy houses and pull this thing up? Because we'd never done it before. We didn't know if it would work. So that was kind of another one of our carrots that we did. That's on what I would do differently. I would not offer a preferred return again, especially on a single family deal, because acquisition is difficult. So it's different if you say, hey, we're going to do a syndication on this 150 unit apartment building that's already leased up. I mean, you close it, first of the month comes, boom, you've got income coming in immediately. Right. When you're buying 35 houses from zero, you've got to buy, you've got to renovate, you got to lease. I mean, it could take 7 or 8 months per house, depending on how much work needs to be done. Now, if you can find some that, hey, it's a package of 4 and they're already leased, that's great. But those are harder and harder to find now.
We're having the same problem here.
So we wouldn't do the preferred return. So on the operation of the fund, this is, I think, where we didn't know what we were getting into. We really understood the real estate side of it. We know how to acquire property, fix property, lease property, do all that. Just the operation of the fund doesn't sound like it's that hard. It's a lot more time consuming than we had imagined.
And what were the tasks that were super time consuming?
So it's a little different than, say, you've got an investor and you just send them a monthly statement from Rent Manager and it kicks it out and it's all nice and pretty. You have to do those. You either have to get a really expensive software to do that, or you do it, or maybe a combination of both. But you're preparing those statements for the investors every quarter.
So does
And then
every
if you're-
investor get the same one, or did they all kind of want their own little thing?
No, they all get the same statement, but it's going to vary because maybe you've got 75 shares and Gwen's got 125 shares. So you got to individually do everybody's statement. Here's your return. Here's your investment. Here's your return. Here's what it did. And we actually have a website with an owner portal, so they could log in and say, "Hey, I want to see the Midtown Fund," and they could click on that, and it would have this house, just every house description, what the rents are. Things like that, kind of a back office that you have to fix for them to look at, prepare their returns, figure the distributions, whether they're quarterly, annually, do all the 1099s for that. If we were sending out quarterly reports, I think quarterly reports are good, but I would not do quarterly distributions again. And that's what we were doing.
So
and it would take a lot of time.
we're going to be backing up against a wall here time-wise, but so what are the things that you would do again or would not do? What are your takeaways? And
Okay.
So looking at it is like if there's somebody watching or listening, giving them advice.
So what we would not do again, I'd mention the number one, we wouldn't do the preferred return. It's just too time consuming, and it's not like a typical rental home. I think most investors are okay. If they're putting $100,000 in your deal, you don't need to pay them every quarter.
Yeah.
You give it to it once a year, that's all they need. We would not do the debt ratios that we did before. We were really trying to max out how much we could buy. I think we would do less debt, more cash, and more reserves.
Wouldn't the
because
banks have made you do 20% or
yes.
the maximum?
That's what we did 80-20.
Okay.
I would probably do 65-35. Just because as the general partner whose name is on the loan,
Oh yeah.
I like the margin. The margin helps you rest a little bit better. And I would specify my cash reserves. Like if I'm doing it per house, I would know every house how much our cash reserve is going to be on each one. So you make sure you don't spend too much on renovation on one house and not have enough reserve for the other. Just things that would make me sleep better.
Right.
Are more cash on hand, less debt.
Right.
I'd be very specific on when the first return would be paid. Even if you're doing a preferred return, I would not do a return until 1 year into it, just because it takes a lot of time to get everything up and running and smooth. And if you're doing a preferred return and somebody gives you $100,000 on January 1st and they're expecting their first quarter preferred return April 1st,
That's coming out of your
you're
pocket.
like, well, geez, we haven't even gotten everything up and running yet.
Right.
So there was a lot more time, and I mentioned this, a lot more time managing the investment versus just the property management side of it than we figured. And then back to your question a long time ago, Gwen. Raising the money. Who do you go to raise the money? So I thought that this was going to be the hardest part, raising the money. And I think everybody thinks that raising the money is going to be the hardest part. It is not. If you put together a good investment and you have a good presentation and you go to the right people, so who are the right people? But you go to the right people
That you know.
they're going to be lining up to put stuff in. So the first round of the right people are the people around you that already know what you do and trust you. And then who do they know that they could invite to be a part of it? And then we've had very, very good success with physicians because most of those guys have a lot of liquid cash and they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of them, well, I invested in this special surgical hospital, but they cap them out on those deals at like 1.5%, 2% is all they allow them to own in those things. And they're always looking for something to be in. And they're typically not called. Those are not the guys that called and said, hey, I got something else to do with this money. Can I cash out? They're just head down doing their heart surgery or dental surgery or whatever they do. And if they can plug $100,000 in your deal and forget it, they love it.
Yeah.
So that's been our biggest like pocket of success is dealing with those guys.
So Gwen, are you a little bit frustrated with Tracy for not calling us about investment opportunities?
Well, we're hoping that you call us for your next syndication.
Because, like to your point, it and I get it, it's hard to actually believe this. But if people have decent idea, there is so much money out there right now, especially. You can make it happen. And the returns don't even need to be all that impressive because there's nowhere else to put it. It's kind of a hedge against inflation at this point.
Right. Well, I would say one of my longtime friends who's very successful in business, and I looked at this with this advice. He said, the two things I've learned, and this guy does like multi-million-dollar deals. He said, you don't want to be in business with somebody that doesn't have enough money. And on the other side of that, you don't want to be in business with somebody who's got too much money. And I will say we did have a couple of the too much money guys in a couple of these deals, and they were not ideal. I mean, the guys that you think about, oh, they got tons of money, they're just going to put it in. They are more often than not the guys who are like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you're like, whoa.
Back to the hospital,
so the problem
dude.
with them is they got into the weeds too much.
They got into the weeds.
And so
much.
you'd send them the quarterly report, and then you spend an hour on the phone with them anyway.
Right. Every time. Or not them. Can you jump on with my staff and go over this, and then they'll go over it with. I mean, it's just like,
I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, our minimum investment was $50,000, and I think the biggest investment we had was $250,000. But our $250,000 guys was two guys. They were great. They were just easy peasy. But it's the guys that you think like, oh yeah, they got a lot of money. I know they'll do this. Yeah, the guys with a lot of money can also give you a lot of headaches because it doesn't mean as much to them, and they don't care. You're just another like, I've got investments here, and here, and if I got to put my thumb on you for something, I will.
Well, and they're probably aggregating all of the information into some software where they need to be able to look at it at the end of a quarter and say, here's how it's doing. So the only way they can get the full picture of their investment is by pulling the information manually from you.
Yeah. They're like, well, your performance said we were going to do 12.5%, but based on the first quarter, it looks like we're only on track for 9.5% this year. I'm like, dude, we've only bought like 5 houses.
It's like, chill.
Yeah, right. So, that's. I thought the money was going to be the hardest thing, and it wasn't. It was the operational side of the fund that was really harder than anything because we had the experience and the know-how for the property side, and I think. On one of these deals, we brought in a partner that his specific deal was contacts and raising money. And this other guy also told me, he said, never bring on a partner for something that you can hire somebody else and fire him. So he was like, never bring on. He's like, don't bring in an attorney as a partner. Pay for the attorney, and if you don't like him, you can fire him.
Right.
So the same thing. There are people out there that you can pay to raise money that would be cheaper than bringing them in as a partner on your deal.
Well, I think we'll just call you
give up
next
any
time.
part of your GP?
Yeah.
Why give it?
Next time we need to aggregate some cash, we're just going to call you and be, hey, Tracy, you want this? Help build some money for us.
We'll do
it. All right. Well, we end up having to end it here, unfortunately.
I do have 2 quick questions, though. So I do want to ask you, you have this insurance product that you've devised for property managers. Can you just give us a quick rundown on that?
Yes. So it's a tenant insurance product that we set up for the property management company as a master policy for them. So Anaquim or Renter's Place owns the policy. We add our tenants on there, and it just makes it easy to track renter's insurance, and then we bill it back to them. We put it in. If you're a property manager listening to this, you've probably heard of the tenant benefit package or resident benefit package. And we started that about 5 years ago specifically for insurance. And now it's kind of taken off. It's kind of funny that we hear everybody talking about it. And we're like, man, we didn't even know that it was going to be a big deal when we started doing it. But you can make a little spread on it, which is nice for a property management company.
Absolutely.
I keep telling my staff, we don't need more doors. We just need to maximize what we're making on the current doors.
Cool. Okay. And then also, I wanted to ask you, what's your biggest boneheaded move in business?
Oh, shoot. I knew you were going to ask me that.
Can I answer that for him?
I've made so many. I would say my biggest bonehead move was not paying the few dollars that it would have cost for title insurance on a property. I tell people every time, get your title insurance. Came back to bite me to the tune of about $18,000.
Oh,
So
no way.
for that, $600 policy, yeah, we'll be fine. We don't need that. It's not like the policy they offer you at Best Buy to extend your warranty. Get title insurance.
Get title. Okay,
I
good
like
to know.
that one. And then what's a book that you would recommend? Because we're going to give a book to anyone who leaves a 5-star review and some feedback on Apple Podcasts after the show. And so we're going to give this particular book away. Which one is it? What's your favorite one?
Okay, so it has nothing to do with real estate. It's just a really great, easy, inspiring read. And it's called The Incredible True Story of Blondie Baruti.
Okay.
And it's about a kid who survived the genocide in the Congo and, humping it through the woods for a year with his mom, avoiding getting killed to, everything. And he played basketball was his passion. And he would walk, 5 to 10 miles a day one way just to get to play basketball and back. And this whole journey eventually brings him to the United States where he played college basketball and then went to Hollywood and it's actually starred in some major motion pictures, just not like starred, but been in them. And it's just an amazing, inspiring story.
Okay.
It kind of helps me kind of put my easy life in perspective.
Oh, I love it. Well,
That's
thank you
awesome.
so much for that recommendation. And we want to thank you so much, Tracy, for being on the Bootstrappers
thanks
Show.
for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Good seeing you again. It had been too long. Let's, when all this COVID thing goes away, let's be sure to get together at the next convention.
Conference.
The next conference.
All right.
That's right.
Eventually they'll have them again.
I
hope so. Thank you, Tracy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And this has been Bootstrappers. See you next week.
This has been Bootstrappers, a unique presentation designed to help you better understand how the world turns. Contact Gwen or Jeremy at hosts@bootstrappers.club or visit our website, anaquim.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, and our YouTube channel. Thank you and join us next time for Bootstrappers.